I had worked at Café Lumiere for 3 years when I first noticed her. Every Tuesday, exactly at 2 p.m., she walked in and claimed the same table, one slightly hidden by a giant monstera plant near the front window. There was something hypnotic about her presence. The way she moved, precise and poised, with silver streaks laced through her dark hair like they belonged there. She didn't smile much, didn't linger on pleasantries, but every time our eyes met when I placed her coffee and lemon tart on the table, I felt it. A static in the air. A pull I couldn't name. For weeks, I waited for her visits like they were holidays. I'd adjust my break time just to be on the floor when she arrived. I memorized her order: black coffee, no sugar, and the lemon tart. She never stayed longer than 1 hour and 17 minutes. She never brought a laptop, just a small leather-bound notebook filled with elegant, slanted handwriting I couldn't quite see. She barely looked at her phone. She didn't try to be mysterious. She simply was. I wanted to speak to her, ask her name, say something beyond the usual script. But I didn't know how to breach that careful, almost sacred space between barista and customer without shattering it. Until the day I did something completely out of character. I scribbled my phone number on her receipt and wrote, "You make Tuesdays worth waking up for." I almost chickened out. But I placed it upside down on the table and walked away, heart pounding like I'd just broken the law. When she left, I didn't watch. Couldn't. But later that night, my phone lit up. "Jane, you notice things others don't. That's rare." And just like that, a quiet text message opened the door to something entirely unexpected. Her name, or so I thought, was Jane. We started with cautious messages, mostly about coffee and pastries, but it didn't take long before we dove deeper. She wanted to know everything about me. I told her about my brother Milo, and how I raised him after our parents died. Our mom from cancer, and dad in a car crash 7 months later. I gave up design school to take care of him. That's how I ended up behind a counter, slinging cappuccinos instead of sketching interiors. Jane told me she worked in a corporate job, managing people who never really saw her. She felt trapped in a role that didn't reflect who she truly was. "Sometimes," she wrote one night, "it feels like people only speak to my title, not to me." That hit too close. I knew what it was like to feel invisible, to be seen only through your responsibilities. Our messages turned into late-night confessions. She sent photos of architectural details she liked. I shared sketches of cafe layouts I had been designing in secret. She asked the kind of questions no one else had, like what color I associated with comfort, or which spaces made me feel safest. She never pushed, but she always listened. We never talked about meeting. Somehow, the screen between us made everything safer. But every Tuesday at 2 p.m., she still came to Café Lumiere, ordered the same thing, sat in the same seat. We barely spoke in person, just our usual quiet ritual. It was like we were living two versions of ourselves, her as the silent, mysterious customer, and me as the cheerful barista with a private storm under the surface. Then, one morning, Gerald, my manager, announced a design competition. The company was renovating all Café Lumiere locations and wanted submissions from employees. The winner would get a job in the corporate design department and a cash bonus. I felt something shift in me. Oh, for the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe in a future that looked different. I told Jane about the competition, breathless with excitement. Her messages came back quick and encouraging. She offered ideas, challenged my designs, even referenced industry articles I'd never read. Her feedback was insightful, maybe too insightful for someone outside the design world. But I didn't question it. I was just grateful for the help. And then came the moment that changed everything. One Tuesday, after she left the cafe, I found a business card tucked beneath her tip. The name on it sent ice through my veins. Ella Lehner Nora Kastner, CEO, Kastner Hospitality Group. Jane. The woman I had poured my heart out to. The woman I had been texting, sketching for, dreaming about. She wasn't just some mysterious regular. She was my boss. She owned the cafe, the whole chain. And she'd been sitting across from me every week, building a connection with me under a name that wasn't hers. The receipt with her real name sat like a branding iron in my palm. Ella Laner, Nora Kastner. Yo. Jane had been a mask this whole time. And I had given pieces of myself to someone who never truly existed. That night I didn't sleep. Couldn't. Every text, every voice message replayed in my mind. Her insights on cafe lighting, her offhand comments about board preferences. They weren't guesses. She had known. She had been there, watching, listening, guiding me through a competition she controlled from the top. The next morning, I dragged myself through my shift. My smile felt brittle. My hands shook when I poured drinks. I wanted to scream, to cry, to ask her why. Why pretend to be someone else? Why encourage me to dream when she'd been the gatekeeper all along? But at 2 p.m. like clockwork she walked in. Same window seat. Same black coffee and lemon tart. But everything was different now. I took her order, my voice cold, mechanical. I didn't meet her eyes. I didn't ask how she was. When I returned with her tray, she spoke softly. "Thank you, Audrey." As if nothing had changed. As if she hadn't lied to me for weeks. That night, her text came just after 9 p.m. "Nora, I know you saw the card. I should have told you the truth long ago. I was afraid if you knew who I was, you'd stop talking to me. And I didn't want to lose what we had." I didn't reply. "Nora, please. Let me explain in person. Not as your CEO. Just as me." But I couldn't trust her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Still, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Not the CEO, not the deceiver, but the woman who sent photos of old Parisian cafes and asked me what they made me feel. The woman who, voice trembling, admitted how lonely success could be. I hated her for lying. But part of me hated myself more for missing her anyway. A week passed. She still came every Tuesday. Still ordered the same thing. Still left without a word, but always left a note on the back of her receipt. Short ones. "I miss our talks. I saw a window seat today that reminded me of your sketch. I'm still here. When you're ready." And somehow, despite everything, I kept those notes. Milo noticed. "You okay?" he asked one night as I stared at my untouched pasta. "I'm fine," I lied. Again. But he looked at me the way only someone who'd shared your worst nights can. He didn't press. The design competition deadline loomed closer. I worked late, sometimes until the cafe closed. Every corner of my layout bore her fingerprints. Ideas she'd pushed me to explore. Questions she'd asked that forced me to dig deeper. I hated that. I hated how much of her was inside this dream I wanted so badly. And then, the day before the submission, Gerald announced a surprise. Corporate would be visiting next week. Full executive inspection. Nora would be there. Officially. When the day came, I wore my cleanest black shirt and forced my hair into something resembling professional. The cafe buzzed with nervous energy. At 11 o'clock sharp they arrived. She was at the front of the group. Not Jane. Not Nora with a lowercase n. Ella Laner Kastner. Yo. Impeccably dressed. Oh. Commanding. She greeted Gerald. Smiled at the staff. But when her eyes met mine, something flickered. A softness, a hesitation. I looked away. We went through the motions. Coffee spilled. Gerald panicked. I cleaned up messes and bit my tongue until the meeting ended. When I finally escaped to the stockroom, I thought I was alone. But then she followed. "Nora," I said, the name strange and sharp in my mouth. "Audrey. I know you don't want to see me, but please, just 5 minutes." 5 minutes turned into 40. She told me everything. How her father built Café Lumiere from nothing. How she inherited the empire after his sudden death. How lonely leadership became. How she came to our cafe to feel grounded, to remember the place where it all started. "And then," she said, "you left that note." And I felt seen, not as a CEO, not as Kastner, just as someone. I wanted to believe her. God, part of me did. But I couldn't forget the betrayal. "You let me spill my dreams to a ghost," I said. "You knew everything about me. I knew nothing about you." "I know," she whispered. "And I'm sorry. But the version of me you met, Jane, that was real. I just didn't have the courage to tell you who I really was." Her voice cracked. For the first time, I saw not a powerful executive, but a scared woman clinging to the only honest connection she had. But it didn't erase what she did. "I need time," I said, voice trembling. "Time to figure out if any of this was real." "I'll wait," she said, stepping back. "As long as it takes." That night I submitted my design. Not because of her, not to impress her, but because I wanted it. 'Cause I deserved it. Still, when I looked at my sketch, the lowered counter, the curved windows, the quiet nooks for solitude and connection, I saw her there. Her influence, her fingerprints, her ghost. And I didn't know whether to be grateful or heartbroken. The week after the inspection passed like a fever dream. Nora, no longer Jane, kept her Tuesday ritual. She came in at 2 p.m., sat at the same table, ordered the same things. But now, every second of her presence felt louder, heavier. Like my skin could feel her eyes even when I didn't look. Kept my distance. Polite, cold, measured. She left notes like always. Folded receipts tucked under the saucer with lines like, "You look tired today. Don't forget to breathe." The counter redesign in your sketch. Inspired. Still here. Still waiting. I didn't respond. But I didn't throw the notes away either. And then the email came. Finalist. My design had made it into the top 5. I was invited to present to the executive board in 2 weeks. It was everything I'd worked for. Everything I wanted. And I felt sick. Because now I had to stand in a room filled with her people and prove I belonged there. Not because I had her attention, but because I had earned it. Truly. Honestly. When I told Prika, she squealed so loud she scared a customer into dropping a latte. "Audrey, this is it. You're gonna be a designer. Like a real one." But I couldn't shake the voice in my head. What if you only made it because of her? I poured that fear into preparation. I redrafted every part of the design. I reworked the lighting plan, reshaped the seating layout, rewrote the statement of purpose. The new version was sharper, clearer. Still, every corner whispered her name. The following Tuesday, Nora came in. She looked different. No suit. No armor. Just jeans, a gray sweater, and tired eyes. When I greeted her with the usual, "Welcome to Café Lumiere," she gave me a smile that felt like a question. "I'll try the almond croissant today," she said. "And maybe a cappuccino." A small peace offering. Subtle shift. I took her order without reacting. Delivered it with quiet efficiency, and didn't look back. But before she left, she approached the counter. "Congratulations on making the finals," she said, voice soft. "Your design was exceptional." He nodded. "Thank you." She hesitated. "For what it's worth, I've recused myself from the final vote. I won't influence the outcome." I appreciated the gesture. I really did. But it didn't undo the unease coiled in my chest. Later at home, Milo found me surrounded by sketches. "Still mad at CEO Lady?" he asked, flopping onto the couch beside me. "Still confused," I admitted. She lied. But everything she said, it felt real. "She gave you space, didn't she?" he pointed out. "That counts." I sighed. I don't know how to trust someone who made me feel so safe while keeping the biggest part of herself a secret. "Maybe you don't trust her," he said. "Maybe you trust the version of her that talked to you at 2 a.m. The woman who made you feel seen. Even if her name was a lie, the connection wasn't." His words echoed in my head the rest of the night. The day of the presentation arrived gray and cold. I wore my best. Black pants, the navy blouse I reserved for interviews, the same blazer I wore to my parents' funeral. Felt like armor. The Kastner Hospitality headquarters was sleek, modern, intimidating. I walked into the boardroom trying to breathe. Nora wasn't there. 3 board members sat at the table. 1 woman, 2 men, all older, polished, unreadable. I set up my materials, connected my laptop. The door opened. She entered last. Sharp suit. Pulled back hair. Corporate mask fully in place. We locked eyes only for a second before she took her seat at the far end of the table. Please begin, someone said. So I did. I presented my concept not as someone trying to impress Nora, but as someone who believed in the power of space. I talked about connection, about design that encouraged community without sacrificing solitude. I described how layout could shape interaction, how seating arrangement could define comfort, how natural light could influence emotion. I showed them the window nook, the place of quiet presence, the table of vulnerability. I didn't say it was inspired by her. I didn't need to. Nora's face didn't move. But her eyes, they softened. I wrapped my pitch and answered questions. Technical ones, practical ones, even budget ones. I was prepared. I was strong. And when it ended, I was proud. Not because she was in the room, but because I knew I belonged there. After the others filed out, Nora approached me slowly. Your presentation, she paused, voice more careful than I'd ever heard. It was beautiful. And cutting. He nodded. It was honest. I deserved it, she said. I didn't do it to punish you, I said. I did it because this is who I am. And this, I gestured to the plans, is what I want. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded envelope. The board voted yesterday. You've been selected. This was just the final formality. Froze. You didn't vote. I wasn't in the room, she said. I wanted your work to speak for itself. And it did. I looked down at the envelope, then back at her. So this meeting was... what? Theater. It was closure, she replied. And a chance to say what I should have said from the beginning. I didn't take the envelope. Not yet. You broke my trust, I said. You built something on lies and waited too long to tell the truth. I know. And I don't know if I can forgive that. Her voice broke. Then don't. But please believe this. Everything I shared as Jane was real. I never lied about how I felt. We stood in silence. Two people with too much history and too little ground beneath us. I'll think about it, I said. That's all I can ask. I took the envelope. Not because I forgave her, but because it was mine. The work was mine. Talent. A dream. It had never belonged to her. And maybe, just maybe, if she was willing to start over with the truth, something new could be built. But it would be slow. And it would be mine to decide. The envelope sat on my desk for 3 days. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I already knew what it said. That I'd been offered the junior design role at Kastner Hospitality Group. That my design, the one with open sightlines and quiet corners and honest flow, had won. But it didn't feel like a win. Not yet. Because it wasn't just about the job. It was about everything the job touched. My trust, my grief, my hope, and the woman who had tangled herself into every sketch and page of it. Nora. Both and neither. I almost declined the offer. I almost let my fear of being a footnote in her story steal away the one thing that was fully mine. But I didn't. I accepted the position on a Thursday morning, emailed from a coffee shop across town. Somewhere new. Somewhere Nora wouldn't find me. In my message, I added one line that wasn't required. I accept on one condition. Our professional lives are separate from anything else. I report to design. Not to you. She didn't reply right away. That night I received a voice note. Her voice was quiet. Sure. But not evasive. Agreed. No shortcuts. No interference. I'll recuse myself entirely. Thank you, Audrey. For your talent and for your boundaries. And just like that, the slate was cleaner. Not erased, but clear enough to start something new. My first project wasn't a major hotel or a glossy new cafe. It was the redesign of a small Café Lumiere location on the edge of the city. Unremarkable to most people. But to me it was a blank page. I kept my part-time shifts at my original cafe. Gerald joked that I couldn't let go of the espresso machine. The truth was I needed the balance. I wasn't ready to live entirely in Nora's world. Still every Tuesday at 2 p.m. she came in. Sometimes in jeans, sometimes in her usual power suits. She never assumed anything. Never pressed. Sometimes she read. Sometimes she brought her laptop. Sometimes she just sat quietly with her coffee and tart, like nothing had changed. Until one Tuesday she walked in and I asked, "Want to try something new today?" She looked up cautious. "What do you recommend?" I handed her a menu. "Let's find out together." That became our rhythm. Small changes, shifts in tone, new pastries, new cafes. Slowly we carved something out of the wreckage. A new version of us. One not built on fantasy or deception, but on slow, quiet truth. 6 weeks later she met Milo. Not as my boss, but as the woman I was dating. He eyed her across the dinner table, smirking. "So you're the CO/incognito romantic." She didn't flinch. "Guilty. Just don't break her heart," he said, blunt as ever. "She's the only family I've got." "I won't," she promised. And I believed her. We grew careful with each other. Honest. We learned to ask instead of assume. I taught her how to make French press. She showed me how to read boardroom dynamics. I helped her reimagine a boutique hotel lobby for warmth. She helped me stand my ground in client meetings. But the moment that cemented everything came nearly a year after I'd first written my number on that receipt. It was our unofficial anniversary. A rainy afternoon. She took me to a quiet restaurant and handed me a gift box. Inside, framed under glass, was that first receipt. My note, faded but legible. "You make Tuesdays worth waking up for." Next to it was a fresh note in her handwriting. "You make every day worth it. Love, Nora." Not Jane. Cried. Because it was everything I didn't know I needed. And everything she knew to give. Months later I pitched her an idea. One I had been shaping quietly in my sketchbook. A design incubator. A studio built into one of the Café Lumiere spaces, offering underrepresented creatives access to tools, mentorship, and workspace. A safe place for people like me, those with talent but no access, to grow. She didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said. "We'll call it the Lumiere Collective." The first studio opened at the original café. Her father's first store. We kept the café in front. In the back we built a creative haven. And every time someone walked in, nervous, unsure, gripping a sketchbook like it was armor, I saw myself. I made a promise. We'd give them what we didn't have. A space to be seen. And every now and then, when I found someone who reminded me of that version of me, tired, hidden, hungry for connection, I'd bring them their check with a quiet note scribbled underneath. Sometimes it said, "Your ideas matter." Sometimes, "Don't give up." But once, just once, it said, "You make Tuesdays worth waking up for." And the circle quietly, perfectly closed.